Now, introduction
Uh, Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. We from IS department welcome you all. So this is an session for open electives. We are going to brief you about open electives. In our department, we are offering you 3 open electives. One is software engineering practice. Okay. The other one is web application design and programming, and the third one is data analytics. Okay. So these are the 3 electives which we are going to offer, and one by one we will be briefing you about these electives. To begin with, I will start with software engineering practice. Okay. So software engineering practice, basically, as the name tells you, it deals with the software engineering principles. Now, coming on to the software engineering practice, as you know, it is a 3-credit course, and there are 5 units. Okay, the first unit deals with the introduction and software process. Now, what is software engineering? Basically, it is a systematic application of engineering approaches, okay, to the development of software. Okay. When you try to build a software, you don't directly get along with the coding process. There are a lot of things which you need to do before the final product comes out. So, what are the practices that you follow? How systematically you go about developing the project is what is dealt with the software engineering. So, basically, as a software engineer, you're a person who applies the principles of software engineering to design the software, to develop, to maintain the software. Okay, so you have to test the software, and finally, the software has to be evaluated before it is deployed at the customer's place. Okay, so there are a lot of things before the final product is launched. You cannot just go about launching the final product. Okay, the design process is there, then you have to develop the software, then the maintaining has to be done, the testing, which is a very important phase. Okay, the software has to be thoroughly tested. If there are any faults, it can be rectified then and there itself. And finally, it is deployed at the customer's place. And of course, once it is deployed, also the service needs to be provided as and when required. So this is the introduction part. We will be discussing about the software and the different models which are used in software practices, such as this waterfall model, incremental development model, etc. So all these models basically aim at the different methods, okay, that we need to follow before we deploy the final product. Okay, right from the design till the deployment. The second unit deals with the agile software development. So in the second unit, basically we deal about the set of practices. Okay, it is called as agile, a set of practices intended to improve the effectiveness of the software development professionals, teams, and organizations. Okay, it basically advocates adaptive planning, okay, and evolutionary development, and it encourages flexible responses to changes in requirements. Sometimes what happens, the customer tells you a requirement and the product is being developed, but as and how, okay, he starts using the product, or as and how the people start using the product, they may require some other things to be incorporated in the software. That is, they may require some changes to be done to the already existing software. So how that particular software can be made flexible, okay, how the resources can be made available, how the problems can be addressed. Okay, so all these things are taken care in this unit 2, which deals with the agile software development. Okay, the next thing is basically it deals with the requirements in engineering. Okay, now what is the requirement process in engineering. Basically, there are two types of requirements. One is a functional requirement, and the other one is a non-functional requirement. Now, functional requirement is basically what the system does and what the system must not do. So, if I want to give an example about functional requirements, it deals with business rules, it deals with administrative functions, it deals with authentication, authorization levels, audit tracking. Okay, so what all things is expected from your system? Say, if I take an example of ATM, what are the basic functions which are required? Okay, it should be able to deposit, it should be able to withdraw the cash. Okay, or if you enter the bank, you should be able to know the balance, you should be able to deposit the cash, you should be able to withdraw the cash. Okay, the check transfer, okay, DD, all these are the basic functions when you are developing a software for a bank. Okay, so this is called as the functional requirements. Now, non-functional requirements, okay, they do not directly affect the basic functionality. To give you some examples, it is like performance, which is nothing but the response time, throughput, okay, utilization, then scalability, availability, reliability, whether your software is reliable or no. Okay, when I say reliability, it means if a software goes down, how fast you can get it up working for the customers. Then maintainability, serviceability, all these things which are not the basic functions of the project but are very important, these are called as non-functional requirements. So these are the things which we'll be studying in Unit 3. Okay. In Unit 4, we will be studying certain design and implementation aspects, such as use case models or sequence models. So use case model is basically a graphical depiction, okay, of a user's interaction with the system. Okay, to give an example, when a user enters the ATM, okay, user is nothing but the customer, ATM machine is nothing but the system. Okay, he inserts his card and he enters the amount and other details, of course, the PIN and other details, and he gets the cash. So this is how the user interacts with the system. Okay, that is nothing but the use case diagram. Like this, you have use case diagrams, sequence diagrams, which are very important in developing the design of the system before we go for the final product. Okay, this is what is being dealt in Unit 4, design and implementation. Now, finally, coming on to Unit 5, okay, it deals with the quality of the software. When you develop a software, quality plays an important role, okay, because you would not like the customers to keep complaining to you every now and then that there are bugs in the software. So, how the quality is to be met, okay, what are the procedures to ensure quality, okay, then the version management, how we are going to release the software. Okay, all these things, that is the final things that you need to take care of. Okay, once the software is developed, what all things I need to do, how the quality is ensured, how I release the software, how I install the software, all these things are dealt with Unit 5. So basically, this subject deals with the entire process, right from how the software development process starts, okay, the design aspects, the coding, the testing, all these things, till the time the final software is developed, the outcome is ready, you have tested it, and now you are ready for deployment and release. Okay, so this is about the subject. So now I just hand over to my colleague, Professor Mathad, who will be briefing you about the next elective. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good morning to all of you. Myself, Professor K.S. Mathad, a faculty in Information Science and Engineering Department. The open elective, which I will be handling, is Web Application Design and Programming. Open elective or the electives you may be knowing will be offered by the departments from other departments. So the open electives which I am handling is Web Application Design and Programming. This focuses more on web programming. And to begin with, the first unit, it has got hypertext markup language introduction part, wherein you will be studying about HTML, which we call hypertext markup language, that focuses on the HTML widgets that you every day you see on your browser, web browser. So all those HTML widgets are created using a markup language, hypertext, um, that you will be studying in the introduction part. Other than that, it focuses also on CSS. You might have heard about CSS, cascading style sheet. And the name itself implies it is regarding a style to be given to the HTML controls, which you are able to see in the web browser. Here, cascading style sheet helps a lot to apply the style to the widgets that you are able to see in the web browser. So this unit 1 focuses on HTML as well as cascading style sheet. Unit 2 will be extension to HTML again, wherein it focuses on creation of tables, then forms. What every day you see in a web browser is usually a form. And a form consists of tables, you have text boxes, you have radio buttons, you have check boxes. So all these controls can be created using HTML. And since it is a markup language, any browser is configured with an interpreter and will be able to process those HTML tags. So you doesn't require any compiler or anything. Anything that you do the coding with HTML can be processed by a browser because a browser is configured with an interpreter. So markup language requires only an interpreter, and it can process it and shows the results about the HTML code. It also includes extension to CSS, second unit, wherein about the positioning of the elements. You might have seen about the elements that will be scrolling. So that we call it as floating elements, then multi-column layouts. So all these frameworks you will be studying in Unit 2. Now, coming on to Unit 3. Unit 3 is on client-side scripting language. Okay, we call it as a scripting language. What you all might have studied is programming language, C programming. But web application design and programming, it focuses on client-side scripting language, wherein whenever we go for designing a web application, it has got programming at client side also as well as at server side also. Usually, web application involves interaction between client and server. Usually, clients are the web browsers, and at the server side, you have the server side programming languages like PHP. You might have heard about PHP. So those are server side programming scripting languages or programming languages. So JavaScript is what you are going to study in Unit 3, which is a client side scripting language. And to make a web page, HTML page, usually we call it as a web page. And this web page, if you want to make it dynamic, it requires a JavaScript. And JavaScript helps web page to interact with the user and to make it dynamic. So JavaScript supports HTML page to make it dynamic, wherein it can interact with the user and it can handle the events. Usually we call it as JavaScript events. And every time you fill a form and click on submit, the validation part happens. Validation of the input that you enter, usually it happens at the client side itself. It is very important to make a validation at the client side because again it has to go to server side, server has to process it, and then validation needs to be performed. It takes a lot of time. To avoid that, usually JavaScript helps to do the validation at the client side, and it is done using JavaScript so that it can handle the events very easily, and it after handling the events, it helps the user to validate the input and submit to the server side. Okay, it handles the JavaScript events. Then coming on to PHP. So it is a server-side scripting language, wherein whenever at the client side JavaScript does the validation and sends it to the server, at the server side that data needs to be processed, and that can be done with PHP. In Unit 3, you get an introduction about PHP, which is a hypertext preprocessor, which is server-side programming scripting thing, wherein it receives the data from the client side, then it does the processing and gives the response appropriately. In PHP, in Unit 3, it consists of JavaScript introduction, then PHP also. And the continuation of PHP is there in Unit 4 again, wherein the programming or the scripting using PHP. You will be studying about PHP arrays, then get and post methods of receiving the data from the client side and then process it, it sends the response to the client side. It consists of classes and objects. Usually the hypertext preprocessor, PHP, what we say, it always interacts, does the scripting considering the classes and objects. So it will be handling the objects dynamically. It also involves reading and writing to the files at the server side. So this is about fourth unit, which is about the PHP, server-side scripting language. Then unit 5, it is about web applications, then passing of the information via the query strings. It can be either through the strings or it can be via URL. You might have seen in the web browser, when you fill a form and click on submit, the URL that you are able to see in the browser, it automatically starts changing. And this is what happens in passing of the information via the URL path. That you will be studying in detail. It also focuses on the usage of cookies and sessions. You might have heard about cookie on your browser, then the sessions. So all those things will be introduced to you in this last unit. It also talks about jQuery, okay, pseudo classes, then jQuery foundation. You might have heard about Ajax. Ajax also will be introduced in the last unit, which focuses more on animation, then MVC framework. Then it also focuses on XML. Okay, XML purpose, it is also a markup language, but it also holds the data rather than only processing it or the displaying of the widgets. It also holds some data so that the data can be passed on to the server side. That is done with XML. So this is about the last unit, which focuses on Ajax, cookies, sessions, XML, MVC framework. And the textbook that you will be referring to is The Fundamentals of Web Development by Connolly and Hoare. And there are a few reference books also. So this entire syllabus will be available in Information Science and Engineering web page in git.edu. So home page of ISC, Information Science Department homepage. If you have a look at that, you will be able to look at the entire syllabus. So all of you can browse that content, which is available in ISC homepage. Okay, it is 2018 scheme syllabus. Okay, thank you for listening to this session. I will hand over the session to Professor S.D. Perur, sir. He will be talking about data analytics.
Very good morning to one and all. So I am Professor Srivatsa Perur in the Department of ISC. So I'll be dealing today, or I'll be introducing to the subject called as data analytics, which will be given or which is being floated as open elective for 7th semester. So here, basically, whichever field you take, the data which is being generated is enormous. You take a mobile phone, you take a WhatsApp messenger, the amount of data you generate or a single individual generate through the WhatsApp is in terms of gigabytes per day, probably. Look out for the Facebook posts. Each individual, if you post 1 or 3 posts per day, then in the global scenario, what would be the amount of data that has been generated? Now, the data has been generated, but what is the best way to analyze this data? Or can we come to conclusions, or can we come to inferences from these data? So, in order to do this, or in order to analyze what these data are telling us, we go on for a particular concept called as data analytics. So, this data analytics is being floated as an open elective for 7th semester. Irrespective of the departments, data plays an important role. Take it weather forecasting, take it the data required for the IPL fixations or IPL analysis, or take it the data which is for the mechanics of a certain part. Take the data of any house construction things it is there. So wherever you go, irrespective of the department, the data analytics plays a major role. So in order to uh, provide a solution for all these things, to in order to provide a understanding of how the analysis of the data is being made, we have come up with a content, or we have come up with a curriculum which involves the mathematical purposes, the analytic purpose, and different algorithms which can be used to analyze the data effectively. So here, the subject has been divided into 5 modules. First module deals with the introduction and the life cycle. Second module deals with the basic data analytic methods. Third module deals with the association rules and regressions. Fourth module deals with the classification. And fifth module deals with the big data visualization. So in this life cycle and introduction, we cover the basic introductory part of the subject. The concepts which are elementary in nature and is a must requirement to understand what is data analytics, we are going to cover here. There are concepts like what is big data, then what are the state of practice in analysis, then what is the difference between business intelligence and data science, what is the current analytical architecture which is being underlying in this data analytics life cycle, then what ecosystem is there currently wherein which big data is playing an important role, what is the new approach of big data, or how the analysis is being done on a big data, we are going to look out here. When I say a big data, it goes on for petabytes of data. The big data is defined by 3 V's: variety, volume, and velocity. Variety, the amount or the different variety of the data which is being generated. Volume specifies the huge number of data which is being generated. As I said, the data being generated is in petabytes. It might go on further also. And the speed at which the data is being generated, we call it as velocity of the data. So these 3 V's characterize a big data. A data is considered to be big data if it is variety, or if it is having much of varieties, if the speed of the generation of the data is very fast, and if okay, so this we call it as big data. Here in this subject, we are going to deal with this data. So in the first unit, we are going to look out for the life cycle of the data. So there are basically 6 different phases in this life cycle. First is the discovery phase. Second is the data preparation phase. Third is the model planning phase. Fourth is the model building. Fifth is communication of the results. And sixth is operationalize. So we are going to consider, or we are going to study these different phases of data analytics life cycle in detail in the first unit. Along with this, we'll have one case study on how these phases can be imbibed onto the data analytics. In the second unit, we deal with basic data analytics method. So this consists of the hypothesis testing, what is the difference of mean, basic statistics thing which is required for the data analytics we are going to deal with here. Data analytics is nothing but application of statistics or mathematics onto the given data to come out for an inference or the story what the data is saying to us. We are going to look out for type 1 errors, type 2 errors, and then we look out for a statistical approach called as ANOVA, analysis of variance. Then we are going to look out for advanced analytical theory and methods. So then we look out for the clustering techniques like k-means algorithm, what are the use cases in k-means algorithm, then how we are going to apply this k-means algorithm, where we are going to apply this k-means algorithm, what are the necessary conditions or prerequisites to be considered before applying this k-means algorithm. All these things we'll be dealing with here. And what is the number of clusters we need to select, or how we are going to determine the number of clusters for a particular application, that we are going to analyze over here. And then what is the reason to choose and the cautions for this selection of this particular algorithm, we are going to analyze over here, or we are going to study here. In the third unit, we look out for association rules and regressions. So association rules, we are looking out for a priori algorithm. This completely deals with a data mining technique. So capturing our knowledge, taking or knowledge gathering from a data, we are going to look out here. So overview, a priori algorithm, evaluation of candidate rules, case study we are going to have here, that the case study is of a transaction in a grocery store, which we call it as market basket analysis. Then we will go on for the validation and testing, diagnostics. So these are the things which we have considered for the association rules here. And then regression. So in this regression, we are going to look out for linear regression, logistic regression. What are the reasons to choose the regression, whether we need to choose linear regression or logistic regression. For example, if the data is continuous in nature, then we go on for selection of regression, linear regression technique. Or if the data is discrete or binary in nature, then we go on for selecting the logistic regression. Some other rules are also there, or some other reasons are also there to choose between the linear regression and logistic regression, which we'll be dealing with in the third unit. Along with this, we'll have some additional regression algorithms or models which are specified. Then in the fourth unit, we come across for the classification thing. Till now, we had considered about the clustering, we had considered about the association. Now we go on for classification, grouping of similar entities onto a single set. This is the basic definition of classification. Here, there are different methods which we are looking out for in this fourth unit. The decision tree algorithm, the general algorithm which is there, and then the evaluation of the decision tree, how decisions can be made by constructing a tree for a given data. So that we are going to study in deep here. And then we have one more algorithm which we call it as naive based classification algorithm. This is an classification algorithm which is being used for text analysis or text mining, so sentiment analysis which we speak about. So in order to do that, we are going to use this naive based algorithm. So this is something which we are going to deal with in the classification. And when it comes to the fifth unit, we go on for big data visualization. So here in this big data visualization, we are introducing you to a software which is called as Tableau. So in this fifth unit, we are going to take out for the introduction to data visualization, what data visualization exactly means. So it is the graphical representation or pictorial representation of whatever inferences we have got from the data which we have analyzed, that we are going to make it as a visualization, and we are going to keep it in front of the users as a reports. So that we are going to deal with here. Then what is challenges, or what are the challenges we get when we are dealing with this big data visualization? Then conventional data visualization tools, techniques for visual data representation, what are the different types of data visualization, how we can visualize the big data, tools that are used in data visualization, analytical techniques which are used in big data or big data visualization. So these are the techniques. The fifth unit is completely related to how we are going to present the inferences to the users which you have got from the data which you have analyzed. So that we are going to deal with in this fifth unit. So this complete subject deals with how data can be analyzed and how it can be presented on to the users as reports. What is the story that a data is telling you from from the previous histories or from the previous records? We can say, or weather forecasting department will say that it is going to rain at a particular time in a particular location. How they are going to do that? Because they have a huge data of weather forecasting which has been done from years before, and based on the analysis of that particular data, they can predict that it will be raining or it will be sunny or it will be cloudy on this particular location or on this time in this particular location. So such kind of analytics plays a very important role when it comes to the current generation or current trends. So in irrespective of the departments, this data analytics performs a major role, or it plays a major role. Wherever you go, the data will always be there. It is how best we can analyze the data and give the inferences, and we can predict or modify our plan of action for further improvement of an organization or of an process. So how that can be done, we are going to deal with in this subject of data analytics. So we have the data science and big data analytics of EMC Education Services, Relay Publications, and then we have the Tableau data visualization codebook as a textbooks. Along with we have data analytics, beginning R, the statistical programming language, data mining with R, learning with case studies as the reference books. So if you are interested or if you are keen on learning how this analytics of the data can be done, or how best stories can be written on these data which you have analyzed, what hidden stories or what hidden information the data is giving you, that all if you want to understand and if you want to implement it and make a life as a data scientist, I suggest you to take up this data analytics course, which acts as a foundation for your data scientist career. Okay, so this is all I needed to say in this point of time. So I thank one and all who are listening to this. Thank you for being here. This is Srivatsa Perur signing off.